Society. Henrietta and Ronnie have done a really amazing job. We're in a period of transition, and along with Luke Caden and some other of us as hangers-on to the search committee, Josette Sharon was selected as the new CEO, and she put on just an amazing performance in terms of just a really brilliant strategic plan and great management skills. And I think anybody who was there listening to this yesterday would have to be really, really dazzled. So chapeau, I guess it's the wrong dinner. Chapeau does that. Also, I wanted to be here. I have to leave in a little bit and fly off someplace, which apparently is my destiny. But I wanted to come tonight, not just for Asia Society, but also for David Bonner. And someone else will introduce David, but David is really an extraordinary person. I think just in terms of human endurance, forget inspiration, insight, intellect, creativity, I think David is close to the world record holder on a year-to-year basis in terms of number of hours in the air. And I think it's 1,300 hours of flying. And just to give you a context, 600 hours is 1 month in the air, 24 hours a day. David covers more ground, more effectively, with more of a provocative intellect and brilliance than anybody I know. In I think it was 91 or 2, he called me and asked me to co-invest in a buyout of Continental Airlines, which I thought was like a suicide mission. And at that point, there was no aggregate retained earnings in the entire airline business in the United States since its founding. And I turned it down because I thought I was like a prudent person, and apparently I was just a stupid one. And David, I think it was like 6-1, 8-1, and it was the start of building an extraordinary enterprise at Texas Pacific Group. And everybody views David as the most creative person in the alternative asset industry. And you picked a marvelous guy and a good friend and an extraordinary talent. And we were just talking about how much longer can we keep running around like this. And I think the answer is until they turn the lights up. And we're just, we're now playing for time with the same intensity, but we're getting a little older, but we both feel like we're somewhere in our mid-40s, so we got a lot of white space ahead. Just a minute or two on the Schwarzman Scholars Program. This is like, something that seemed like a good idea at the time. It's sort of like encroaching on my life. I was approached by the president of Genoa, where I'm on the SEM board, with an idea for their 100th anniversary of starting some type of exchange program. And I sort of looked at that and I said, well, I'm like a busy person, and exchange programs per se, I don't know why I should be motivated about this. And so President Gu retired, and he was succeeded by the next president, who was a bit more persistent. And I eluded his grasp for 2 years, and he flew to Paris, where I was living, and said, listen, I really would like you to focus on this and think about it seriously. I'll come to Paris and see you. And I started thinking about why would I want to do something, and what was the sense of this, because just doing another student exchange program was not high on my list. And I started thinking about what was going to be one of the seminal issues of not just our age, but looking forward over the next 50 to 100 years. And the issue of China and what happens when a country grows at a rate of double the United States. It's hard to calculate the growth rate compared to Europe because it didn't grow. The Western world barely creates any jobs. China's producing 10 million jobs a year. China will end up, in all probability, within 20 years as the largest economy in the world. Not per capita, but in the aggregate. And what I've seen as part of some odd things that have happened the last 5 to 7 years in terms of populism, targeting groups, people, and so forth, is that in the West, people seldom blame themselves for their own failures. They have to have somebody else to blame their lack of success. And typically, those are winners. And China's going to be a winner in the eyes of the world. And if there is a kind of hostility unleashed, the way other parts of society, we've just seen it in the debt issue, the functioning of the U.S. government, when you unleash these forces, really bizarre things happen. And longer term, I could foresee a situation where China is involved with economic disputes as a result of being targeted, trade, and even military issues, because there's already some friction between Japan and China. And as China continues to grow, the likelihood that these things will intensify seems to me to be pretty reasonable. So I tried to think about, how can I get in the way of this? How can we defuse this type of inevitable tension? And I looked at different models, and having been rejected by the Rhodes Scholars, I sort of thought maybe that could be a good model. So you know, the concept of taking potential leaders and bringing them to China, where very few of the highest talent people in the West go, because they're going to Harvard, they're going to Yale, they're going to Princeton and Stanford and MIT and Caltech and all the great universities, not only in the United States, but the Oxfords and Cambridges and Grande Écoles, and you know, they're not going to China for education in particular. And I thought that if we could take that kind of raw talent, the sort of a Bill Clinton model, and he's not the only successful Rhodes Scholar, and bring them to China and give them a completely unique experience where we can introduce them to the leaders of the country, where we can take them around with professors so they see all kinds of different parts of China, where they can get a mentor from the real world in areas that they're interested in studying, so they meet their families, they see their company if they're interested in business, or if it's law, they get to meet the head of the biggest law firm there. And then we bring in all kinds of other stuff, and you know, great curriculum, Western design, jointly with Tsinghua, that we can produce in 1 year a really intense experience with 200 kids a year, 45% U.S., 20% China, 35% rest of world. So we're going to cover as much of rest of world as we can with that set and mix these people up. I've had a lot of fun designing and building. For those of you who just ruin your life doing a home, you ought to try a whole academic building. And you know, we sort of are doing it. A lot of different architectural issues in China. You can have these modern glass cubes, as you know, if you go to Shanghai or Beijing. And I thought it would be a good idea, if people are going to be there for a year, to have a more Chinese-styled type of building, but have it be modern. I got Bob Stern, who's a terrific architect, as everybody knows, who's the dean of the Yale Architecture School, to design this. We checked everything with our friends at Tsinghua to make sure we weren't making some, unwise, ethnocentric set of decisions that people go, "What were you thinking?" And we're breaking ground on the building next Thursday. We set out an agenda for ourselves to have at least $300 million raised, which I think we're going to be able to do, which is, you know, for somebody like David or myself, we used to start out our career running around the world. If people give you $5 or $10 million, you thought you died and gone to heaven. I mean, you'd fly across a whole continent for $5 million. Now we go across a continent, somebody will give you $500 million, right? So I'm back to the beginning. I sort of feel like a Hare Krishna. So watch out if I'm walking among you, because I'll just ask you for something. And it's a percentage game. And apparently, I'm either desperate or not shy. And because I want to get all the money raised, and we made a real good progress to this. And what was interesting